Right, today we're trying to work out something you've no doubt noticed. It's this thing that happens where games get announced, and the response is like, who asked for this? Why? We're having this strange thing happen with, odd things like Lord of the Rings Gollum, the situation with hyenas. What was the other one? Bleeding Edge from Ninja Theory. Just the whole kind of game you see and you're like, why did you make this? Like, who did you make this for? Yeah.
Who's going to play this? And I guess the funny thing is, how come we, as the audience, see these announcements and go, who is this for? But they seem to not catch that internally at any point. So they're happy to make things like Gollum and hyenas and Skull and Bones, and no one ever goes, like, at the start of the process, is anyone going to buy this?
Yeah, Skull of Bones kind of made sense a decade ago.
Yeah,
and also, oh boy, I think Skull and Bones' first showing was pretty damn weak.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't help that live stream was pretty weak.
Absolutely.
I actually have no idea what the broad audience reaction has been. I just personally thought it looked really boring. We'll see, though. So, finding your audience. This is a problem even Ubisoft have had. Hyperscape, Defiant X, the Ghost X-Defiant. Whoops. The Ghost Recon shooter that they tried to do, the free-to-play thing. Remember that, too, very recently?
Frontlines, or is that the one coming up? It's hard to tell.
The one coming up. I believe the one coming up. And all these strange things where they're just left confused and wondering. And I think sadly, one of the games that really made me think that recently, funny enough, I suppose, from an English team, like with the whole Bleeding Edge situation, that's Hyenas. Hyenas is weird. And it's from the team that did Alien Isolation, which I think to a lot of people is almost sad, because you kind of would want more of Alien Isolation. So, what Hyenas is, right? And there's a few games we get to talk about today. One of them is even the situation where the Pokemon Go people are experiencing declining performance in their other titles and have actually laid off staff. So the first thing, at some point, can we put a pin in this whole, like, weird corporate punk art style thing?
Yes, please.
I'm so sick and tired of it now. I've like, not even played a game with it. I don't know what it is. But anyway.
Yeah, because that's like, well,
so maybe they're trying to be edgy. Basically, it feels like it's trying to be so... Maybe I'm just out of touch. Maybe actually the Zoomers see this and think it is very cool.
Well, I'm trying to think of the games that actually use that kind of aesthetic. And obviously there's a lot of different aesthetics that kind of blend together here. But you've got Hyperscape, you've got Destruction All-Stars, and I think Bleeding Edge kind of fits a little bit. You get a little bit messy when you get into the kind of the more old school as opposed to the future punk kind of stuff. But it's all that same aesthetic that kind of cropped up around the Battle Royale kind of idea. And everyone's like, yes, I watched Running Man. Let's make that, but for the future generation. Because obviously, Running Man was one of the first movies that kind of really showed off the blood sports kind of idea. And that's just been everywhere. And none of these games have been profoundly successful. No one's went, oh yeah, that's the aesthetic everyone wants. It seems to be a load of publishers have that idea in their head and never goes anywhere.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's like it's just trying to be hip to the kids and cool. I'm genuinely confused. So if you can help unconfuse me, I'd really appreciate that. But basically, game format wise, well, there's a post-societal collapse future where a team of 3 players, you're boarding spaceship, trying to take the hoarded wealth and pop culture art of billionaires to take to Mars, which I don't know. It feels like a Twitter. It feels like Twitter came up with the Battle Royale concept. I suppose, like, I can get it. That's fun. But I don't know. I wish I could pin down what it is that just gives you that's pretty tryhard. I have no idea what creates that, like, internal response. I seriously don't know. If you do know, please help me.
It's the whole thing that resulted in the silence brand thing on Twitter, where you just, like, there's this, like, innate sense that humans have for, this is earnest, this is honest, this is meaningful, this is, like, from someone's heart and soul, versus this is a corporate slop designed to be a product. People can feel that in their bones, in their soul somehow. And you can even see it in, like, how different things are, like, especially when, like, say a show or a game is trying to parody something, and they do it right, and the thin line between parodying it correctly and parodying it wrongly is so like, it's so thin, but people can smell it immediately and just know, no, you're doing this for a reason. You're not doing this because you enjoy it. We can tell, we can feel it, and we're not going to buy your game. It's
and then
crazy.
It's weird because that's probably not the case. Like, the people who make it probably do enjoy it and think it's good.
Yeah, but
and
are
putting effort in.
Yeah.
I don't know where it comes from,
Yeah.
but it's a thing.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't come together completely holistically. It's like, it's almost as if there's like an element of earnestness is required from at least so much of a portion of developers. But it feels like sometimes like the concept is of going, okay, well, this is such a shit concept, but I'll do my best within this concept. But it's like, because they don't actually agree with the concept or they don't feel it themselves, it kind of doesn't work. And that's a really like nonsensical way to talk, because you think, well, it doesn't matter, an artist should be able to do good art no matter what, but it just, in the way it comes together, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, maybe it's the case where it's like, in the way that these newer raft of Ubisoft announcements have felt like entries in a genre using their brands. I suppose this feels like an entry in a genre, though a genre that actually people are being a bit confused about. And I guess it's the thing where maybe it feels more, well, it's like Escape from Tarkov, like innovated and changed things up. Maybe what's happening now is people, they don't kind of like the mild iteration and retheme of another game.
Maybe.
And maybe that's why it's like, oh, it's a battle royale, but Tom Clancy. I want that. Maybe that just doesn't happen. So it's weird. Now, look, actual gameplay, fast-paced, character ability-based combat, zero-G stuff, and all that does look kind of cool. But, man, this is a tough market to enter, and it's one where there's been a lot of confusion. They had to put out a tweet. By the way, not a battle royale.
Yeah.
Now, another thing here. So, ICO partners have the Footprints tool. Now, this basically tracks trending topics across like articles and stuff over the week. So it's a really good way to just see, is something actually getting buzz? So this is a new game announced from Sega, right? You know, Creative Assembly, that's some big names. It's not on the table.
No.
So that does mean that across all games media, there was less than 372 stories. It could also just be the sort of thing where, I mean, it's kind of hard to penetrate into that. But I think looking at trailer views, general buzz, I think we can definitely agree that it's kind of low.
Yeah, and it kind of feels to me the same kind of idea of Lawbreakers, right? Where it doesn't matter how good the game is, if the fantasy of playing it doesn't exist for people. I think that's kind of what is the core of this whole thing, is like, there's just this unexplainable like culture that just exists in the air, and if you're not a part of it, people just go, I don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah,
and it's really
I think
crazy.
Too,
like,
you know, you see the Sonic that's in it and the Rubik's cubes and how they kind of have been like, oh, look at these Easter eggs and secrets, and then it just feels cynical.
Yeah, it's
like oh, pop culture references, go away.
Yeah, to me, I think that's neat. You've got a Sega game, you're collecting Sonic stuff. It sounds like a really cool idea. But that's only logically. Whatever emotional core is in me as a person sees that and goes, I don't care. I have no reason to care. And it's really hard to point that out logically. Because you're like, oh, no, I can follow the logic why they would think it works. So where's the reason it doesn't? Where's the invisible part of the equation that is, people don't care about this?
Yeah, I feel like that's the sort of X factor that makes a game do super good.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I guess an example would be Fall Guys, right? Well, Fall Guys is a pretty unique kind of game overall, but you look at the aesthetic of it, you look at how all of the aesthetic and all of the setting comes together, you're like, oh yeah, that's neat. Oh yeah, I can see how that appeals to people. And that's a bit of a kind of out there example, but it's the first one that came to my head for like recent big success. It was like, yeah, it just works.
Yeah.
It just works.
So, we're going to move on to another weird title that again is did people even ask for this? And it's Skull and Bones. And actually I think with Skull and Bones, I think they've basically persisted because of the sunk cost fallacy. They're going to release a game that I think no one's going to give a shit about. I don't think it's going to be well reviewed. It's probably not going to perform financially that well. I mean, even look at the situation, Watch Dogs Legion like gets the show at E3. People are super excited about all, right, all that, and then the reviews come out and it's like, oh, kind of boring generative content, yawn. Doesn't seem like the game does that well. It's like I don't know, is that like the Ubisoft special? And
yep.
I mean, I'll tell you what killed me instantly. It was the tweet going around comparing it to the joke Elden Ring UI. So do you remember Elden Ring came out and a whole bunch of like a bunch of Horizon devs were freaking mauling out?
Ubisoft devs too.
Yeah. Oh, of course. I mean, Ubisoft devs. Ubisoft games. God, what they have done to UI is, geez. Right. So this is like the Ubisoftification of Elden Ring, as you can see. Horrible, disgusting. They're skull and bones. I mean, that's the thing with Skull and Bones for me. I looked at it, and to be honest, Skull and Bones looks like mud to me.
It really does,
looks.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've seen a game that looks so much like past generation sloppy mud. And I guess you compare that to Skull and Bones, and it's like it's so goddamn vibrant and colorful. Obviously, completely different art styles. But whatever, I don't know. From what they showed off, and I can only take them at their word, at the word of what they've shown me in an attempt to sell me this game, and goddamn does it look completely pointless.
That's exactly the word, pointless.
The people are talking about doing contracts and all of that, like on the little live stream or event thing they did. I'm just thinking they'd be like, you're doing Radiant quests in a fucking boat. I'm sure there could be more to it than that. But with the way that they presented it, and the way that it just looks like a pretty boring upgrade loop Ubisoft game.
Yeah.
Like, play Sea of Thieves.
That's exactly the kind of the grand response to this has been, why have you made this?
Yeah, because it's like, if you want to do it like this and be Frodo real, you have to be a bit less gamey, so not have a UI that looks like this, and you need to go far more with immersion and like a little bit more narrative and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and
if you actually want people to feel invested in this, like, kind of pirate fantasy, versus going for the sort of more gameplay oriented Sea of Thieves. But with here, it's just like the game looks like sludge, and it's clearly just a resource grind. I basically is one of the most soulless games I've seen in a while.
Yeah, and that's the crazy part where you see that, oh yeah, here's everything you can do with a game where you're, a pirate on a ship. Right, Skull and Bones. You see the logo. That is such a great like selling point. And it just doesn't match anything that the game actually feels like. It's not about what you actually do in the game, because what you do is pirate stuff. But you don't feel like a pirate. You're just doing stuff.
Here's the deal, Matt. If this was not the modern era, right? Because we live in the modern era, and that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
If this was not the modern era, maybe this would have been a game that's a bit like a Sea of Thieves meets a Sid Meier's Pirates.
Sweet, yeah.
Where maybe you would get some, I don't want to say life sim, but you would get significantly, more broad immersion, more things to do in the way that somebody will, a game that I liked back in the day, Freelancer, or, something like that, but like in the pirate fantasy. Maybe imagine a sort of a double or triple A like Mountain Blade, but it's pirate stuff.
Yeah.
Like, so that you're actually living out the pirate fantasy. Whereas I look at this and like multiplayer loot grind, single and multiplayer loot grind with combat that looks pretty dull. Why have you done this? I don't know. That was my response to it anyway.
Yeah,
and it's just another good example though, because this is a game that they greenlit in the wake of Assassin's Creed having some, for the day, pretty damn fun boat mechanics.
People love Black Flag to this day for it.
Yeah. But like, I think if you want that pirate experience, go play Black Flag.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they're going to give you as much of that here. You're going to be doing piracy and stuff, but in the guise of a soulless loot game.
Yeah.
Or, resource grind game.
Yeah, it's like the actual setting of the game and the genre of which your combat's taking place is all like a very shallow coat of paint over you're playing the Skinner box video game of get your resources, get your stuff, buy the microtransaction cosmetic. It's all like the layer of paint is getting thinner and thinner every time.
That's a great way to put it. I totally feel that.
Yeah.
Plus, like, this thing's been in development hell. So this could have been a game that would have made sense to release many years ago. But it's been in development hell for so long, I guess they feel like they have to release it. They may as well get some ROI on what they've ended up doing. That studio itself has had a whole bunch of drama. I don't know. It's just like another slice of weirdness from Ubisoft, I suppose. Then there's the one that you added to this list, which was Forspoken. And I'll definitely say, with Forspoken, it looks fun to me. It looks gorgeous.
It looks great.
I find it... I'm not the biggest isekai kind of guy anyway. I definitely find it trying to be hip to the kids to be really annoying.
That's exactly what it
Something about its dialogue and stuff just feels... here's the thing. I know it's supposed to feel out of place.
Yeah.
But I guess it just feels a bit weird and pandery. And then you said, turns out it's like a Square Enix, Japanese-made, action-adventure game from Luminous, but like with a Western writing team.
Oh yeah, it's good.
And
Like
then
it's got a really strong Western writing team as well, and that's what's weird about it, because it just seems like such an awful mismatch.
I don't know. So it's weird. I think it could be a really fun game.
I think it will be. Yes.
I'm currently confused about the way that it's being positioned, I suppose.
Exactly.
And I
keep
on looking at their trailers, and it's that thing where it's like rap or something, but they mess up. It's like the way that the Warcraft movie trailer was like so weirdly electronic. Trying to be cool, the way the trailer music is, right? So I don't know. It could just be that I haven't actually enjoyed how this game has been marketed.
Maybe there's a little bit of that, yeah.
It's not feeling like. I guess I'd be down for it if it wasn't trying to be cool in its marketing in a way that just feels very like what frustrates me about modern movie trailers. So I don't know if that's just that it's had a weak showing. Or weird marketing or weird positioning publicly. Yeah,
it might be, because I think this actually happens quite a lot with some JRPGs, because they're so, in terms of length, they're actually really intentionally obtuse in what their themes are and what their core is, and then it kind of builds on you as you go, and you feel it's really great when you get there, and they kind of get the marketing angle completely wrong, and that happens with fairly complex games.
Yeah.
But I think that marketing is so important, the positioning of the product is so important, that I think there's a lot of people looking at Forspoken and going, what is this?
Yeah.
Why have you made this?
Their hero text for the campaign is "She will rise," and I'm like, what's she rising against? Why does she want to rise? Who is she? Why do I care? I guess it's a bit like with World of Warcraft and Dragonflight, where it just says harness the power. Harness the power of what? Yeah. I've been playing World of Warcraft for a very long time, and I don't know what you mean.
Yeah. Or like the Horizon Forbidden West's campaign was, across all of the buses, across all the banners on Eurogamer, was "Rise above our ruin." And I have played the game. That's not the theme of the game whatsoever. That's what they think the theme of the game is, but that's not what the theme of the game actually is when you play it. It's really crazy. It's like, it doesn't, I don't know how, maybe it does. Maybe that sells to people. But I have a funny feeling it can't sell to core audiences.
Perhaps what we are getting at here, because this is a mixture of how a game is developed, but also how it is positioned to audiences. Perhaps what we are now experiencing is a case of positioning. It's a case of the marketing side. Certainly, I know, in times that we've had, suffice to say, me and Thomas have had to reject a lot of things.
Yes.
Because we want to have tight enough control over, just over our marketing beats and stuff for Pale Beyond. And it's the sort of thing where it's not necessarily any external partner's fault or anything like that, but it's just they're they don't have the skin in the game. They're not they're not there actually sort of in and around the development team. And I think what we see in these larger companies is that almost happens with the marketing department. How many instances are there of developers in these studios looking at the marketing for their game and kind of thinking that's not it.
Yeah.
Could you imagine being involved with the Warcraft movie and then seeing the trailers they made for that thing?
Yeah, actually, there's a pretty interesting thing I've been thinking about recently, and that's Final Fantasy XIV. Kind of has a little bit of the same problems. This might be a Square Enix Western marketing thing, where they had this whole, for Shadowbringers, they had the whole Become the Warrior of Darkness thing. And that was fairly represented in the plot and the point, and it was actually pretty important to it overall. But the actual tone of it was different. where it was very much in the marketing. It was very much a super aspirational thing. And they had Tom Holland in a bunch of marketing ads and stuff. I think someone else famous as well, I can't remember. And he was just doing a whole load of like physical training. You know, he wants to become the warrior, darkness, become the warrior, so he had to get really ripped and really fit. So it's just Tom Holland with his shirt off doing a load of stuff and listing. Yeah.
The hell?
Yeah. So this was all like stuff they did for like the Western marketing of Shadowbringers, and it just seems like Square Enix don't have their like whatever marketing departments don't have their heads screwed on, and that's so core to the whole thing.
To be honest, they struggle. It's like to people who do not know what any of that stuff is. It's going to feel like cringy. It's just gonna feel cringe as fuck.
Yeah, because I suppose that's the part where you can't market to someone with no knowledge something extremely, extremely attention grabbing, but also really nuanced and interesting and good. And I hope that's what's happening with Forspoken.
Yes, me too.
But
it looks fun.
Yeah, but everyone's looking at the marketing one. Who gives a shit? So I looked at some of the only number I looked at because of time was the Twitter followers, and that game clearly has a massive budget, right? It's Luminous Productions, that's the FF15 team. They've been on it for ages, been delayed for so long now. It's clearly massive. And they've got about 27,000 followers on Twitter. And this is a pretty bad metric, but it was just a very quick one I fired together just to check. Stranger of Paradise, the substantially smaller budget game that was, been marketed a lot less, has 26.4 or so. So it's about the similar. And then obviously Square Enix's smaller games like Dayfield Chronicle, Valkyrie Elysium, Star Ocean, they're all like 3, 8, and 18k. So they're a lot smaller. But they're a lot smaller budgeted as well. So it's like the amount of money we've spent to the amount of interest we've garnered isn't there because it's just this kind of what? Who's this game for? Who's game for?
The other one that got me was Lord of the Rings Gollum.
Oh yeah.
And do you know what it is? It just comes back to like say what you want about Electronic Arts and their like movie tie-in games. That did kind of give people what they like very clearly wanted.
Yeah, I mean, was it Third Age the one you liked?
Oh, fuck.
The Final Fantasy X.
I say liked, but there are many asterisks to that.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, Gollum was just another one where you look at the trailer, you're just creeping about. Like, I know it's a stealth action game, and that can be fun. But again, this feels like a stealth action game set in the Lord of the Rings universe. And, it's all marketing, it's Gollum, the untold story. And I guess I'm like, I don't want that. I want a new... it's like, is this a new story? Yes, but it's not. It doesn't feel new.
Yeah.
It feels like backfill.
It's like, compare that to the Mordor games. They're really, really like... They got that fantasy done really, really well. Even with the new story and stuff. It's like, oh yeah, you're going to go... Here's Arkham Combat, and you're going to wreck the whole place. And you've got some of the magic that's really cool with your Wraith and stuff. And that's all really, really enjoyable. And it nailed it, and loads of people bought them and stuff. And now they're like, here's Gollum. Did you go out in the street and ask, would you like to play a video game where you spend the whole game as creeping around as Gollum from Lord of the Rings? Because I'm assuming if you did that, everyone would go, no? Who the fuck wants that? Have you lost your mind?
That's the ultimate fantasy. I want to be Gollum.
Yeah. It's
I guess,
so
look, Sam
insane,
Fisher's gone, so Gollum's the next best guy we have.
Oh my god. It's so crazy that like, I mean, obviously you can see the logic behind this will make a pretty fun video game, or this will work for game design, this will work for all the aspects of development. But then you're like, do players care? And that's the question that I think they've stopped asking. Like, do players care? Do players care about this fantasy and this experience? And if the answer isn't absolutely yes, even if your answer is we'll make them care, just don't. Just do something more sensible instead.
I guess that's what we've been trying to pin down. Something that we've been feeling increasingly.
Yeah.
Where we're just getting, like, things that are, like, gameplay niche entries into franchises.
Yeah.
Or franchise-themed entries into gameplay niches. And it's a bit weird because you hear that and you're like, well, great, that's reductive. You've just explained every single video game. World of Warcraft is an MMORPG in the Warcraft franchise. Grats. Yeah. What a fucking great analysis. Mm-hmm. But you know what I mean, right? When it just feels... It almost feels like the AI put it out.
Exactly.
And again, this is not one of those videos where we're coming to you with a very clear... I mean, we do have a more clear point with Niantic, but...
Yes.
It's trying to work... I guess we're trying to work out the X factor. And maybe if between this video and the comments we work it out, that'll probably be worth a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah.
because it's fundamentally a thing of perspectives. It is impossible when you actually decide to go and do a game. It's then impossible to see the audience's perspective properly.
Well,
you just can't.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of something. Because you say X Factor. I'm not about to talk about an X Factor game. It's fine. X Factor was the kind of the global install mechanic in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and that game also had the X Factor in a way that people absolutely loved playing that for the crossover of IP and the gameplay and the fantasy of that team battle setting. And there's just something about it. Just no one seems to be able to, or whenever that's replicated, it seems random. Indies can do it really well. You see it happen in indies all the time where like V Rising comes out. Everyone's like, vampire base buildings drivel? Hell yeah. Holy shit.
It's like
that's perfect.
a more unique and risky. I guess that's it. People want to see the V Rising but with a AAA budget so that it's like, okay, this is so new and different and crazy.
Yeah.
I think it's like, are we getting tired of like, oh yeah, it's another open world action something game. It's another one.
Yeah, at least
Will it look or feel like an Ubisoft one? That's maybe the big question. You're like, okay, well.
Yeah, it's like that, but it's like if you have something that's a generic kind of gameplay thing, you have to have the fantasy, the desire for players to play it, not because it's a video game, but because it's a thing they get to experience and get to enjoy in a unique capacity. It's why the Spider-Man games are so perfect, because they marry that really, really well. But like, do you want to swing around as Spider-Man? And everyone on the planet goes, hell yeah. And then they're like, do you want to spin around, or do you want to swing around as the other Spider-Man? Because the game's good as well. Hell yeah. It's like, I think Insomniac's Marvel's Wolverine will be an interesting one, because that immediately hits a lot less easy than Spider-Man, but you can imagine the game that you want to play as Wolverine. You can imagine that. Insomniac are probably going to make that. Ubisoft wouldn't. Ubisoft wouldn't sit down and go, well, what do players want to experience in a Wolverine game? They would sit down and go, what makes sense to design a Wolverine game with our budget and resources? Whereas Insomniac will ask the hard question and then answer it, and Ubisoft will ask the soulless question and answer it.
Well, it's that
and
thing.
that's
It's
what the
why
difference is.
the Ubisoft games have felt homogenized to hell.
Yeah, because they aren't asking the question, what do players actually want to feel when they're playing? They don't ask that.
Yeah, it's game assembly by numbers at worst.
Yeah.
And then it's like you just have to hope that there's maybe a good story or something, sneaked in there.
Yeah.
Now, an example that does take us away from our usual place, but I think is extremely clear, is Niantic.
Perfect.
So you think about Pokemon Go and you think like, oh, big financial success. People love that game. It still does well. We still get headlines about it doing well.
And it's obvious why.
So then you're like, well, why have they cut their staff? So time to actually go into that. Now, you think about Pokemon Go. Like, what you are doing in Pokemon Go is basically an app letting you do what you do in the video game. Just, of course, microtransactions and stuff. Yeah. But it's a thing. You're traveling around routes in the real world, finding Pokemon, going to gyms. It's pretty in line with, like, what your character actually does in a Pokemon game.
Literally the fantasy, like.
Yeah. Now, they've had a lot of problems actually replicating that success. They have a lot of cancelled projects, staff gone. So, they say that the company was facing a time of economic turmoil and had been reducing costs in a variety of areas, but they need to further streamline to be in the best position to weather any economic storms that lie ahead. I then just think, how the hell do you do Pokemon Go and end up in a time of economic turmoil? That's shocking. So they've said, we've recently decided to stop production in some projects and reduce our workforce by about 8% to focus on key priorities. So the cancelled games then are Heavy Metal, which is a Transformers game, Hamlet, which is a collaboration with a theatrical company called Punch Drunk, who made Sleep No More and some other interactive experiences. So that actually sounds like that could have been the interesting one, perhaps. Blue Sky, which is something connected to WeatherG, which is an AR experience based on controlling the weather around players that won an award at the Niantic Showcase. Snowball, which may be connected to Snowfight, which is an AR snowball fight experience that also won the Niantic Showcase. Then I think the cancelled projects, like, these are more the cool, creative, interesting things. Yeah. The sorts of things that you'd actually be a bit sad that they're not doing, because that's clearly the hobby project that they want to do with their money.
Which is fine, yeah.
Now, the making money bit's been a problem. So, Harry Potter Wizards Unite came out June 2019, shut down January 2020. Catan World Explorers did not come out of its soft beta. sunset September 2021. Pikmin Bloom launched November 21, still going. Peridot?
Peridot?
Yeah, which is a fantasy creature game about befriending and breeding strange friends, not yet released. And NBA Onworld, which is a partnership with the NBA to find local ball players in your area. Why do I read that and just see one of those, like, well, you know, hot singles in your area banner ads that appear in the net?
Yep.
So it's a bit strange because they're all trying to apply, and maybe this is actually our example that we can then backport to the conversation we just had.
Yeah, they're doing the Ubisoft.
Yes. So you take Harry Potter and then you put it into Pokemon Go. You get Wizards Unite. Why doesn't it work? That's the big question, because when you actually look at the size of franchises, yeah, Pokemon's absolutely humongous. So is Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Massive franchise.
Yeah. But then you think about it from the perspective of what we've been talking about today, and it kind of strikes you as obvious. It's like, well, Pokemon Go was the perfect Pokemon fantasy. What's the perfect wizarding world, as it's called now, fantasy?
Being a repressed muggle drawing shapes in your phone.
Yeah, you'd expect it to be something like Hogwarts Legacy, which is coming out later this year.
That's the Harry Potter fantasy.
Yeah, the big, you get to go through the whole time of being at school and engaging in all this world. You get to see the whole world for its glory. Or, in a parallel to the old Lord of the Rings stuff we're talking about, the oldest games, the like PS1 Philosopher's Stone game, was great because it was just, here is a reasonably accurate gameplay recreation of the movie. You get to play through it and it's interactive and it's good. And like, what if Pokemon Go? What if you just walked around as Pokemon Go and did the Pokemon Go thing, but it's wizard creatures instead of Pokemon? And you can go, maybe, but it's just not the same. It is literally not the same thing. It's the same things you're doing with your hands or whatever your gameplay numbers are. And you can port the design over handy enough, even with some changes to match the theme. But in your brain, the player, you're not going, look, the whole goal of Harry Potter world is to catch them all. Wait, no. Fuck, hang on. I don't quite get this. But in Pokemon, it just clicks, it just works, it just makes sense. But seemingly no one at Niantic was able to actually figure that out and go, is there something more than the rational, logical gameplay model and the size of the franchise that's actually connecting here? Is there anything we're missing in this theoretical equation? And it is all of the like magic of the Pokemon idea. And they just didn't seem to think about it very much. That said, Pikmin seems to kind of work a little bit okay thematically, but it's a Nintendo thing, so they're probably happy to fund that with lower revenue like they were with a bunch of their other games. So that's just like what is wrong with these, I guess, product first and product focused companies, that they can never just go, what's the fantasy? Let's do that. So I think that's how like a lot of really good indie games start as well. Like I was saying earlier,
it feels like almost business development led to the game.
Yeah, as opposed to a cool experience for players. Let's make it.
Yeah, it's like business development, or maybe a case where it's like, this is the sort of thing our team is set up to make. So within the bounds of what we can make, what franchises can we attach? What IP can we attach? And maybe that's the issue even Ubisoft has. What are their teams set up to do? Make Ubisoft games.
Yep.
What increasingly are people, I don't want to say increasingly getting tired of, because of course Assassin's Creed Valhalla is like a wildly successful game. But I suppose with like some of the other Ubisoft endeavors, like, why is it that it's weird.
Yeah, I mean, because like this is kind of, a lot of it has been us kind of capitulating and talking about stuff, but I did grab a couple of comments from the Skull and Bones video just to kind of highlight. And the one that really got me is, the public, we want this and this. Ubisoft, what game can we make that could be a hit? Let's make this game that is totally the opposite of everything the audience has been asking us for. And I think there's truth that the audience don't always know what they want, but they could take a good stab at it.
Yeah, it's like the best concepts. I'm totally going to steal a line from Mythic Quest's second season.
Oh, I've got that.
It is, they should feel inevitable yet unexpected. It's like one of the lines that, which sci-fi author says it to? I'm getting mixed up. But anyway, the point basically was, character in it's just being like, it's this planet with these gnarly flesh people and they've got back pouches of flesh. And it's like, okay, that's like a weird sci-fi concept, whatever, but like, what does it mean? And it's like the best sci-fi is like the stuff that, you know, as a viewer, you see and you're like, oh, I couldn't see that. I didn't see that. But now that I see it, it's inevitable.
In hindsight,
it's like, not even in hindsight, just like by seeing it, you're like, oh, that clicks, I get it. And I think there's something about that. There's something like that with games.
Yeah, it just clicks.
It just clicks instead of being a bunch of bits. And I guess some of the games, at least in their public positioning and marketing, it's like they're a partially built Lego set, or you know, they're a little Lego thing, but it just hasn't clicked together yet, and the full form is not there. And I guess that's what's really hard about positioning games and doing the marketing. Like you need to be able to show that. And I guess that's what there's been struggle with. Like with Forspoken, I've seen the trailers that are basically like, look, isekai game. It is a fantasy setting, but the main character talks like you met them in the local coffee shop.
She's from New York, isn't she, I think? Brooklyn, something like that. I think so.
And then the next trailer I saw was, here's a bunch of super modern music and slow-mo shots of combat. And it's like, between these, I still haven't got
what's the game
yet. I haven't got the...
Yeah. What is the click? What is the game?
Yeah. And I think you look at some of the things, like even, you know, you mentioned Wolverine, like Spider-Man, you're like, oh, well, I see how that clicks immediately.
Of course, yeah.
And you can see that not in, you know, you obviously, it's very obvious in hindsight, but as somebody, like, as soon as the Spider-Man game gets announced, you see, you're like, oh yeah, clicks, makes sense. I've got it. So I guess trying to work out what that is. And maybe it is just that it's the public positioning of a game is so finely honed and perfect. And maybe it has to come from just a far, far, far deeper integration of marketing, like with development or whatever. Because there just certainly seems to be a thing where marketing teams find angles on a game and they communicate those angles to an audience, but they struggle to, I guess, like incept it into someone's head. And that's almost like what the best games marketing does. Like, you know, when a game just clicks and you're like, bam, hype, excited. I guess it's what Cyberpunk was able to do initially.
Yeah, of course.
Or, you know, what happened.
Yeah, and I think I've one example that I just remembered that I think is actually probably one of the worst examples of it ever. I think people have maybe warmed to it in hindsight, but I believe it was one of the TV spots for Doom Eternal. Had combat set to fairly generic, like, modern rap. And everyone's like, marketing people, have you looked at Doom Eternal? Have you played it? Do you know what it is? Did you look at anything behind the other game, the first one that went really well? Did you ever stop and think, what kind of music did people what sells Doom as a concept? Well, it's the flow of gameplay. It's that in atmosphere, it's that environment you're in. So you want to replicate that in marketing. You want people to hear the, like, thudding six strings, that real heavy, unique sound that Doom has, and I'll be like, oh, I feel it. Hell yeah, I want that game. Instead, they're like, what's the target demo? Play that target demo song music, because that's what we have on file and it works on average for everything we do, as opposed to let's uniquely target this product for what it is. What's the soul of this product? Let's give it to the viewer instead of fuck whatever works.
I guess that's it. Like, is this basically how do we understand whenever people just leave a YouTube comment saying, look soulless, don't want, lame?
Yeah.
What do they mean? Because they probably mean something. They might not be communicating in a way that is helpful, or a way that, you know, will leave developers thinking they're being given a fair shake of the stick, but
yeah,
there's something, right? So, have we came to any firm conclusions? No. But I think we're getting there. I think we're honing something. We're trying to work out what actually just makes a game concept readily click with an audience. We've at least went through a few different games that have evidently struggled to do that. I guess you just end up in those tricky situations, like with Bleeding Edge, which I believe is being wound down, or maybe it's dead already.
Yeah, I think it's
knows,
dead, yeah.
Where it's like, I'm sure a bunch of people did a lot of work concepting these characters. People did a lot of work creating this gameplay. There's a lot of fun to be had within it. But it turns out it needs to be more than mechanical fun. It needs to be more than a cohesive aesthetic. It needs to have, like, some hidden thing.
Oh, I've got actually I can't believe this didn't come to me before. Metal Gear Rising. Metal Gear Rising Revenge is the perfect example of that. We're like, how is this beautiful? It just is. It just so happens to work. It's just a beautiful game full of soul, even though it's really, if you look at it objectively, a load of shit a lot of the time.
Yeah. Oh, games are strange.
Yep.
So there you go. Right. Help. Please help. Do you think you know what it is? Please let me know what it is. We really want to know what it is. And with that, that's it for us. More videos on the channel, of course, and we'll see you next time.